Zone 3 Podcast. This is Robert Reggie. We're joined today by Bill Faulkner and Kristan Harrington. Thank you again for coming. Thank you again for being our guest. Today we're talking about registry review and how to involve as an MRI tech. So if you would introduce yourselves, we'll start with Kristan. Where are you from, Kristan?
I live in Atlanta, Georgia, and I'm pretty much been there my entire life, except for a few with career changes and whatnot. And I have several children, 3, and then I have more animals than I can count, and then I have a wonderful husband, and so.
You're not counting him as one of the animals?
I'm not.
He's at least housebroken.
It was an easy transition.
We're still working on that. I've got the shot collar that we use, just as a little reminder.
Oh, that's awesome.
We're down to like level 10 versus like 86. Wow, I'm not doing a great job on introducing him on this one, but that's okay. That's okay. Right. I've been in MRI for many years, since 1995, and have had various different types of career moves, changes, and so that's pretty much me.
Awesome.
Well, I'm Bill Faulkner. I live in Chattanooga, Tennessee, born and raised in Chattanooga, Tennessee.
Nice.
Been married this year 42 years. I think it was this year.
Congrats.
Right. Again, my wife's one that deserves congratulations. we've got a daughter, Amber, and we've got she turned 8, granddaughter, Zoe.
And is she local? They're in Chattanooga?
Yeah, they're local
so you're
as well.
See her often?
Yeah,
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's great.
And both my wife and I's mothers are in Chattanooga, and so we're, all families there. A small family. I come from a small family, so I've just got a sister. But again, everybody's local, so it's been great. I've been doing MR since '85, November of '85.
You were born in '85, weren't you, Reggie?
87, so close.
Thank you very much.
82, see here, so.
All right, Kristan was born in the same year I graduated high school. She tells me that all
Are we
the
allowed to say? That was 1995, right?
Yeah, well, 96. Okay, get it right.
Sorry. Well, thank you again for coming. Thank you again for joining us. We're talking about registry review. You guys have very different backgrounds on how you came to be. So if you would kind of just talk about that for a second.
Yeah, because I actually, this is a big subject for me, career evolution. Because because honestly, when I went back to get my bachelor's, I had so many options that I could go to. Like when it comes to CT, going into management, you can, so many things like that. And there's not a lot of internet options. Like when you look on the internet and like, all right, MRI tech, I guess you can become the manager of your department at the max, pay grade or whatever. So I'm so excited to talk about this. I can't wait to hear what you guys have to tell.
You want me to go first?
Yeah, you go ahead.
All right. So I was going for a biology degree, and I started out with the meteorology. I wanted to be a meteorologist, but the classes were beyond what I could ever comprehend. And
then kind of up in the air.
That's pretty good.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I decided to go to Emory University. I got my 2-year degree.
Oh, nice.
And while I was there, I started working in X-ray just because I was broke and needed money. I would do Christmas Eve. I would do anything, just double shifts to make some money. And then after 2 years, I graduated. And then I needed a job desperately. So I went to every department and said, "You're my favorite modality." I'm not even joking. And I said, I can't imagine working anywhere else but here.
Right.
And so essentially...
And the MRI believed you.
Yes.
I love your approach.
I mean, I was desperate, And so MRI offered me a job the day before mammography, or I would be doing a mammography podcast right now.
Right.
So
probably not with us.
Yeah. So, but when I was in
Keep abreast of the issue.
You're on top of
it. Wow, I'm just hurting. Just the belly laughs going on here.
We really need a drum roll or a little.
So my second year of X-ray school, we were allowed. I don't think you're allowed to anymore. It's very specific to the facility. Just stop laughing at yourself.
I'm just thinking of what we got away with.
Yeah, I know. We got away with a lot. So my second year, I was like a patient care tech aide for MR. And they would pay me. They made me do all my rotations and everything there. So that meant I got to change coils out, be within the environment, change patients, wipe up vomit, put films together, all of those things. None of it consisted of touching a scanner whatsoever. But I was in the environment. And so as soon as I graduated from Emory, then I knew I wanted to go on and get my bachelor's degree, and they didn't really have one for what I was looking for, obviously, back in those times. And so I took Perry Sprouls, Dr. Sprouls. He was at Emory, so I took his class with the residents, and I, kind of made up. So it was a Bachelor of Medical Science and Education. They approved it. And so I got that degree. But while I was doing that, I was working full-time at Emory. So I would get up at 4:45 in the morning to miss traffic, would go to the hospital, study in the cafeteria, go to all my classes, and then I would work from 3:30 till 11, which a lot of times was 12 or 1. Right. Get up and do the same thing. But it just took me an additional year because I did have a lot of the core classes done. And while I was working, once I was full-time at Emory, I actually was at a beta site for Philips. And so we were always doing research. When diffusion came out for us in 1997, we could only get a B value because of the gradients of 997. We couldn't get G's, 1,000. And so I was just involved with a lot of, innovative abdominal as far as, we used to, for new techs, we used to just push the contrast in. It's like, okay, try to do, and we used butterfly needles. I'm not even.
Yeah. And back in the day, Emory was well known for its body imaging. They had some radiologists that were well known in the body. And I remember coming up in an early part of MR, Emory was the mecca for the Philips and body imaging and cardiac.
Body imaging was and cardiac actually were very big as far as Philips, and then Emory was pretty well known for that. So I was working there, and I was involved with a lot of functional research, spectroscopy, other types of research that we were involved in. And so Philips approached me and said, we'd like to look at offering you a job and having you do applications. And I thought, well, that's really interesting. I actually thought I would be with Emory until I retired, And so I talked to my father, and he said, Kristan, you've got a little bit left for your bachelor's. Finish out your degree. They will come back if they really want you. And so they did come back. And so then I was hired by them. But I will give people a little interview thing that my dad taught me. He said, research that company. The first thing I found out is that Philips is spelled with one L. I was like, oh my goodness, if I spelled the name of the company wrong,
right,
I'd be crazy. But he said research, because you need to know what you're buying into, what you're doing, and have questions to ask. I actually don't remember if I did, but I think it's a good tip. So I started in basic applications. So I'm in this big corporation. They're Dutch. And then they ask maybe a year later. I think I was only hired because I was on the job training. Truly, I think they hired me because I did have all the research. I'd done so much with runoffs. We used to use pencil marks. I think they were hiring that, and they hired a personality. I'm not sure if I have one,
you do.
But I was trainable. And now, so
to not go too far, how did you get into the research aspect?
Actually, all of us were required.
Oh, so like a rotation?
Yeah.
Because they did a lot. I mean, Emory, it's that facility. It's
cutting edge.
Yeah. I mean, so like awesome. I said, that's what they were really known for. I always remembered that.
Yeah, and they're really back on the Richter scale as far as what they've been doing with a lot of. They're literally on the same block as the CDC. So I mean, literally, it's walking distance.
Let me give you an example. You ever heard of the Dixon Technique?
Yeah.
Okay, Dixon Technique. It's named by Dr. Tom
Dixon.
Tom Dixon.
He's from Emory.
He's from Emory. The Dixon Technique was born at Emory.
Wow. Nice.
Rod Pettigrew, Dr. Pettigrew, cardiac. He's at NIH now, but he started to, a lot of the cardiac. And so I would work with him. And so we did these different, and also we made a ton of money doing research. And again, I was very poor. And so we would sign up to do them. I mean, sometimes I did cadaver, just part of the heads, and I would do it for IACs, just different, coils and all different types of things. It was just something I was approached about. Right. And then also I was, I like to learn. And so I was inspired. So once I got to Phillips, I did basic applications. Absolutely. And I read physics books every night. Because I only had that one course, and I got an 88. I didn't get an A. So I had a lot to learn. I know, slacker. And so I read a lot because I was very nervous, very young. Actually, at that time, the first time they offered me a job, I was 23. At that time, you had to be 25 to rent a car. Oh. But it's illegal to ask you your age. And so this is the truth, they hired me on my 25th birthday.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. And my next biggest promotion years later was on my birthday. So, yeah, it was 2 years ago. No. So then they said, do you want to specialize in spectroscopy or cardiac? And I said I would like to specialize in both. So I pushed myself. And they said, are you willing to do that? And I said, absolutely. You got hard work,
Right.
Yeah. What'd you say? I've heard you say luck is when hard work meets opportunity.
Right.
And so that's what happened. And so I did both, and I spent a lot of time in Europe, in Eindhoven, which is where their headquarters are, and getting a lot of information from the people that were creating all of this. And then there's something within an organizational structure where if you really want to keep moving on and going up to these leadership teams or, whatever area you want to go into, you're really supposed to start looking for a new job, around every 2 years.
Within the organization. Most big organizations are like that. They like to see you not stagnate.
Right.
If they see you in the same job for more than 3 or 4 years, they're thinking you're getting lazy, comfortable, and stagnant.
Well, unfortunately, some managers, I always treated my staff, and I'll get to the leadership management, I always treated the people that work for me as though I would work for them one day. And I do. Actually, they hire Bill and I to speak for Phillips.
Oh, that's funny.
So it's true.
Right.
No, they do.
Right.
And so I always treated them that way. But unfortunately, sometimes leadership or management, they have such a great person, they almost get stuck. Nobody puts baby in the corner, but great employee ends up in the corner because they don't want to lose them.
Right.
And so I think that can be a downfall a lot of times. But if I was fortunate enough, I applied and I got these different. So I became apps, then advanced apps, and then just specialized. Then I became something called Train the Trainer. I trained all the new employees that came in that were going to be doing apps. Right. Then I decided, okay, I'd like to go into management. And so I went into asset management. So, and I'll let you tell them how we met when you get to, because this is how Bill and I met during this time. Mm-hmm. I started doing courses for Phillips in 1999.
Well, didn't you get your MBA at that same time?
Not at that time.
Well, see, I was wrong. I thought you had it.
I have one now.
Yeah, I know you have one.
So, but I did start doing courses for Phillips in 1999. And so I've been speaking for many, many years. It was just I only spoke for Phillips. So actually I spoke in England and Europe. I did those things. I was all over the place, but I was with a company. So that was kind of almost like a little bit of a pigeonhole. Mm-hmm. Occasionally I was asked to speak at other places, but I was always turned down by the company. And that's fine. That was the rules.
Right.
So, again, that's how I met Bill. But I wanted to start to go into management and push myself. So I went into asset management. Literally, I relocated up to Cleveland, Ohio from Atlanta, Georgia. It's very cold there, in case you didn't know. And it snows a good bit.
They have 11 months of winter and 1 month bad ice skating.
He's not even joking. I mean, no reason for a pedicure there. Let's just say it. It is it's a different climate.
Right.
So anyway, I moved up there and I started doing the assets. Just, I don't know, do we need to buy more of these emulators, simulators, so on and so forth. Took care of that, and then I covered for leadership management anytime someone took time off. And again, that's when I met Bill, but he can go into that. And then I decided, I'm ready. I've been taking over for these managers. They decided to completely reorg and make every manager reapply for their job. This is when things really started changing corporate-wise.
Right.
So everybody reapplied. And I ended up getting one of the leadership roles. And I actually got a great one because I got all of North America. And I think I had 5 or 6 modalities. And so none of which I knew anything about other than MR. And
right.
So I'll watch my watch on.
Whack.
Did you catch it? I'll watch my watch on that thing. Okay. All right. I caught my own joke. Maybe it wasn't funny to you, but it should be. I'm joking.
I'm laughing on the inside.
On the inside. Wow. So, then I learned about all these different modalities. I thought that was a fantastic experience. It really widened my horizons. And I think that it was very positive. But at some point, it just became having a lot of children. At that time, we had 5 kids in the house. And so it just became time. Nice,
yeah.
It's called pure stupidity. And so it was just time to make a change. And so then I went on to faculty at Emory. They hired me, and I led the bachelor's degree program there. Oh, I did get my MBA. And the reason I chose my MBA, that's when I was going from asset management to leadership management. The reason I got my MBA was because I was really thinking, just like Emory, when I was doing MR, I thought I was just going to retire with Phillips and be there forever. I'm not a company jumper. I'm just not. And so, but then it was too much. There was too much going on in our house. So took the job when we moved back to Atlanta. Different climate. It was good. And I led the bachelor's degree for MR there for 3 years. And, that worked out really well. And I also took a scanning position again at the Children's Healthcare of Atlanta because I wanted to get back in with some patient care.
Right.
And so I met Bill. Again. So you're going to go through that part. Yeah. That's great. And I just think that our paths are completely different.
Right.
And I think that we both learned from each other because we do have such different backgrounds. Because I'll say, well, I wouldn't handle that because I'll start using some of the MBA stuff. And then we'll say, well, based upon this, this. And I learn so much from him every day. I'm not going to kiss up at all. But, but I think we both complement each other as far as our career backgrounds.
Right.
So that's about it for me.
That's pretty great. Because what do you think is like your defining moment? Because you said you like to learn, but is it like, just working at a place like Emory is where it kind of started? Like you always kind of pushed yourself and like to kind of be a little bit better, and just kind of took off?
Do you know where it started? And you may not know this either. I started doing pageants when I was young. And I don't like to lose anything.
Competitive.
I played tennis in college for 2 years. I don't like to lose.
Right.
And I was seed 6, okay? I wasn't 5. I was 5 one time, but I was out there playing. I mean,
right.
I would say that I am a little bit competitive. My heart rate did just go up a little bit. And so I think I've pushed myself, I'll stay that extra hour. I'll get up 2 hours early when I used to have to work out constantly and be ready for that stuff. And I'm embarrassed to say that I was in pageants, but I was. And so, I've just always pushed myself in that way.
Oh, nice. So. All right. Did you do a lot of extra outside of, work and things like listen to podcasts or?
Yeah, absolutely. Bill and I, we are constantly seeking out answers and correct things. We have something called a $2 bet. It has to be a crisp $2. I mean, people say, well, I'll bet you $1 million. They never pay you.
Right.
Oh, no. In our game, you pay. And it's got to be a crisp $2 bill.
Because that requires a trip to the bank.
Right.
Yeah, but $2 bills are really neat because you can, when you give somebody a tip, the $2 bill, it's like really interesting. First I look at it like, is this fake? No, they really do make them.
Right.
But the banks, you'll have them, but it's just kind of an interesting thing to keep in your wallet.
There's one doctor from the East Coast to a big institution that said he finally just stopped by the bank. He's like, and Kristan, I don't go to the bank, and I just got a wad of $2 bills. And so
he got time to lose it.
No, he has to pay me.
Yeah,
because I win.
Right.
So that's one of our little games that we play as far as educating ourselves and pushing ourselves. So I think it's important. I think Bill is even more driven than I am.
So it was your leadership at Asset, you said, is when you decided to get into leadership, and that's when your paths first cross?
Our paths first crossed. You can tell them how.
Well, she was basically the in charge of all the training courses. Part of what was the training courses that Philips have for their customers.
And I also did training. So
right.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, okay. So at that time, for whatever reason, Philips had someone doing an advanced certain courses for them, an outside person, and one of the people she worked with approached me at one of the seminars and said, we need somebody to do this. Well, at first I started one of the basic MRI course. I think that's what it was. And would you give us a proposal to do it? Okay. Mm-hmm. And then, as you know, I did it and they accepted it. And so I was going to go up and teach these courses. It was, one was a basic and one was an advanced, if I remember correctly. I know advanced was in there somewhere. I just can't remember if it
I didn't
came
do
in
basic
later.
with you. I did advanced with you.
Okay, so I started out doing basic and then they changed me. So that's what it was. So they, so I accepted that. So I went up there. I go up to Cleveland once a month to do this course, and then they asked me. They said, "Well, we want you to do our advanced course." And I said, "Don't you have anybody here that can do it?" Like, no, we want you to.
And I'm like, I'm here. I've been doing it.
Right, but they said we want you to do the advanced course, and the person you'll be working with is Kristan Harrington at the time.
I've had a couple last names.
Anyway, so we want you to be working with Kristan. Okay,
right.
And so I would go up there and I would do this advanced course for them, which is kind of funny because I never scanned on a Philips in my life, right? So, and then they had these emulators, and I got Kristan to teach me how to walk through this so I could show them how to optimize their turbo spin echo, even though I'd never done it before, but anybody can learn.
Right.
Anyway, so that's how we met. And so, yeah, she was, then she got married and she had all these kids. In fact, it was sort of funny because when she started, having her children, every time I'd go up there, she was always pregnant. It was like perpetual pregnancy. I remember one time she was coming down the hall, and
he says waddling.
Right, waddling down the hall, and I look at her and I said, "What is your gestational period?" It's like always. So that's and eventually someone sobered up and realized they shouldn't have to be paying somebody from outside the teaching class. Right. So right. So when somebody finally sobered up, then I stopped going up to do that, and then we kind of lost touch for a while, and our paths weren't crossing then. And then when she moved back to Atlanta, took over the program at Emory, as one of her students was coming to one of the little weekend seminar I was doing.
And he told me, he said, "I'm going to one of Bill Faulkner's." I'm like, "Oh, you're going to really enjoy it. Make sure to tell Bill."
The instructor said hi. That's what the guy said.
Well, the Kristan, or whatever.
I don't know what you told him, but he comes up to me and he goes, "My instructor at Emory told me to tell you hi." And I said, "Who's your instructor?" She said, "Kristan Harrington." I said, "Actually," got my card out, "tell her to call me because," and at that time I had a customer or what became a client approached me about doing some optimization and protocol optimization and other things, image quality things for this group. They had multiple facilities.
Right.
And they had several Philips systems. And again, I know nothing about scanning on Philips, okay?
Right.
And so I said, "Tell her to call me. I have something." And that's how we got to working together. So I got this client. I'm going to need some support. And then we just
Just kind of rolled off.
Just kind of rolled on.
Nice. We're at 11 years now.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, that's probably why we work pretty well together. Because
it's like left foot and right foot watching you guys.
Is it?
You compliment each other very well.
We would win that. What's that thing you do at field day?
Oh, yeah.
You know, where they tie your legs in and you have to run across the field.
Well, one thing we did get from a lot of our viewers, questions that they want us to ask you were questions related to registry review. And I know you have a lot of,
Well, I mean, one of the things I wound up doing a lot of was registry review for whatever. I mean, it's just one of those things. I never saw myself doing this kind of stuff. I mean, it was, we can talk about that later, how I got there. It's kind of odd, different. So one of the things I would recommend for people for registry review, one of the things I'd recommend you not do is necessarily a self-study. The problem with registry reviewing for the registry is a lot of people study too much. Mm-hmm. They study too deep. They feel like they have to understand MR physics. Right. And you do not have to understand MR physics. You have to remember terminology and definition. Right? Memorization. There's basic things that you have to memorize, right? Not understand. And I tell every class, I usually start out with this kind of a little spiel, okay? The ARRT, I learned in a class that I got sent to some years ago, things about multiple choice tests, and there are different formats for multiple choice tests and stuff. Okay, I've never written questions for the ARRT. I've never participated in anything like that. I have nothing. I've never been on a committee. Nothing. Okay?
No affiliation.
No affiliation at all. But they subscribe to a format where you have a question which is called a STEM in a multiple choice format, and then you have the four choices. 3 are called distractors. The other is, of course, the correct answer. It can only be one. The format to which they prefer is that the STEM or the question be about 1 to 3 sentences at most. Right there. And if you think back to it, they're not elaborate questions. Okay. Then the answers, distractor and the answers, all should be approximately the same length. You don't want like 3 short ones and 1 long one, right? You can't have 2 answers that would be mutually exclusive. For example, the answer A, raise the TR. Answer B, lower the TR. And then you got number of averages and receiver bandwidth. 2 others that don't matter, because then you look at that and you go, well, it's probably one of those 2, right?
Right.
I mean, which it would likely have to be. Maybe, but they don't like stuff like that. They also tend to not. Some questions could be perceived as this, but they tend to avoid them. And in fact, in general, in multiple choice tests, negative questions tend to be avoided, because that's a oddity. You tend to answer to a positive, not a negative. Which of the following is not?
Right.
Okay. Those typically are not preferred. Okay. So my whole point is this. Aside from, now that it's on a computer, click on the aorta, click on the, triangular fibrocartilage or whatever.
Right.
Click on the image that's out of phase or something like that. It's a multiple choice test. In a multiple choice test, it's all about definitions. You can't ask how something works. How does oversampling work? You can't ask that in a multiple choice format.
Right.
You turn it on.
You turn it on, right? Another example, then I always give this one. So this is kind of like what you'd see on the registry. For a tissue with a given T1 relaxation time and for a given TR period, the flip angle that will result in maximum signal is known as the blank, which is the Ernst angle. You don't have to know how to calculate it. You don't have to understand it. You just got to remember the definition of an Ernst angle, right? Right. You've got to know, what it looks like when it's in phase, what it looks like when it's out of phase, understand the concept of chemical shift. You don't have to, you just have to memorize this stuff. So what I tell people is take a look at the content specifications. Okay?
Right.
You know what most people don't do is look at the content specifications. What are the content specifications? They're telling you what's on the test.
It's very straightforward.
I mean, it's telling you what's on the test.
It actually tells you the number of questions for each category.
Right.
Right. Now, the categories are getting big, and I will tell you this. If you're prepping for the registry, do not don't understudy or look over patient care.
Oh, that's where they get you. People spend all their time on the physics, and there used to, I think, be only 61 questions. How many questions total are there on the physics? It's ridiculous.
Well, it's like 105 for what they call image production, which is also not the term I would use. It's really data acquisition, right? Right. That's really what it is.
Right.
It's done by Fourier transform, and that's all you need to know. Right.
But then you got the other 95 that you can completely miss.
Right.
Oh, right.
You know, the other thing that's often overlooked is the anatomy.
Right.
Right. And I'll tell you, when I took the registry, the anatomy is what kicked my butt. Because I'm looking at this, I don't know what that is. I don't know.
Right.
I don't know what that is. Right. And so the anatomy lives in what's in the procedure category. See, they don't ask you how do you do a knee, how you do a head. Like, the procedures can be like things about procedures could be like dynamic pituitaries or arterial phase, in the liver. Plain. It depends on the radiologist of the day.
Right. Exactly.
Okay.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
So they can't really get just general specifics about how to do this stuff.
Right.
But that's where anatomy lives. If you look at the content specs, when you get to, I'm just kind of scrolling over here. If you get to where it says procedures, okay, and it goes neurological, spine, whatever, and you look at focus of the questions, the first thing it says is anatomy and physiology. And they can ask you about imaging planes. Well, like what plane would best demonstrate this? I mean, pathological considerations, protocol considerations, patient considerations. See, this is the procedure thing. Right. And it can't get real specific because this has to go across the board. This is why if people study too deep,
let's say that you study spectroscopy and you take so much time with it. I think people should look at this from the perspective of this applies to all of North America, everyone that takes it. Mm-hmm. So if you take someone in a very small, if I hit that one more time, I'm going to be, it's a third a time. Someone that's in a very, very small town, they have very little exposure to spectroscopy, then, you don't need to go that deep into it.
Right.
People are like, well, I don't understand this. And they spend so much time when their focus should be in other areas.
Right.
It's going to be a very high-level question.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, it's got to be very high level. And the answer is probably going to be chemical shift. I mean, just seriously, there's not that much you can ask about it, right?
Don't give it away.
Okay. So anyway, I would read the content specs. And the patient care and management is important because it's increased in the number of questions. And the reason it's increased in the number of questions, or at least my opinion of why, is now the ARRT allows people who have other credentials to sit for the MR Registry and CT. And specifically, these are almost universally nuclear medicine techs. In other words, they're CNMT accredited credentials. So the ARRT now allows these people to sit for CT or MR as their primary through the ARRT. Okay.
Right.
Okay, but they have to be like an RDMS or CNMT. Mm-hmm. The reason for that is because you have PET CT and PET MR. Right. So nuclear techs can get into this. The other thing is that there are several schools throughout the country that offer a 2-year associate program in MRI, just like we went to X-ray school and came out with an RTR, and radiography was our primary, and MR is post-primary. So these schools, all they do is you take an X-ray program, take out X-ray physics, put in MR physics, and you got a 2-year J-CERT accredited program where then these people can sit for MR as their primary. So since they've got, this is my opinion as to why you're seeing an increase in the patient care, you think, well, I went through this on my X-ray registry. Why am I having to do it again? Well, because they have people who have never gone through ARRT primary test.
That makes sense.
You see what I'm saying? Yeah. So now they want to make sure that they have that
proper background.
Yeah. Yes.
Understand.
So again, that's one of the things I recommend people do. If it's not in the content specs, it's not on the test.
Right.
So when you're self-studying, be careful what you're studying.
Right.
And I'm not a big fan of question and answer books, even though I've written one and done 2 editions of it. Okay. Right. I didn't like it. I can tell you a funny story. When the registry was first announced, working a lot with Candy Roth, and who co-wrote some of these books with, right? And so we were. Actually, then there's a company called MTMI. At the time, it was started by a physicist, Dr. Ed Barnes, in Milwaukee. And so I start early on. That's kind of got started in speaking because Ed saw me do something. He says, "Hey, I need an instructor." So basically, it was Ed and me. It was MTMI, right? He was while I was the put out there to do that. Anyway, so Ed says, well, get you and Bill, you and Candy do these MR Registry reviews, right? So MTMI was advertising that, and Candy and I were walking around at RSNA one year, and somebody from the ARRT or ASRT or ARRT comes up to me and goes, I hear you're going to be doing registry reviews. And I said, yeah. She said, how do you know what's on it? And I said, physics, anatomy, just spitballing here. She's like, wow. Well, they had published the specs, right? Right. And so, so they had published the specs. So we wrote that first question and answer book, okay?
Right.
Which really was just from questions that we had in our courses, that we had been doing, right? So this is before the registry. So now we're going to go take the registry. So for people out there that are taking the registry and they're going, it's scaring me to death. Okay, let me tell you something. You want to talk scared? Okay, let's take this, okay? Mm-hmm. I've been teaching MR Registry reviews. I got a freaking book specifically for it. Now I'm going to go take the test. Now what if I fail that test? Because you got to understand,
right?
I didn't have Perry Sprawl's class. We're talking about different paths. Okay, mine is totally different. I didn't have Perry Sprawl's course. How do I know that the way I think I know it is correct?
Right.
How do I know that?
And how stupid are you going to look if you fail the thing after you've been doing courses forever? I mean, how stupid?
Talking mic, I'm sorry.
Okay, so here's the mic.
That was what was scaring me. Now I've got to go do it. How'd you do on the test? No, I kind of failed it. But now sit down and let me tell you how to do it.
So the same thing, exact thing happened to me for the American Board of MR Safety. He's a founding member, so he wrote the test. We started doing courses, and then I was taking the very first one, and I'm like, oh, snap. If I fail this thing, then I'm just going to, and I literally was one of the last people to walk out of that exam. I took my time. Bill kept saying, is she okay? Has she had a seizure? What's going on?
Are you the reason why there's a time limit now?
Yeah. Pretty much.
So anyway, where are they going with that? So right before the test. So when we're getting ready, and back then they didn't offer the course in Chattanooga. Then it was all on paper, it was only offered in certain locations. So Chattanooga is the 4th largest city in Tennessee, but it's not large enough to host one of these, right? So this one, the MR Registry was in Nashville. Okay.
Oh, nice.
So it's a 2-hour drive from Chattanooga. So myself, a gal by the name of Ann Foster, was working with me at the imaging center. I was managing an imaging center at that time. And Sandra was, I forget Sandra's last name. But anyway, so Sandra was, and Ann and I were all in my car driving up to Nashville like this. Just real quiet, nobody talking, okay? And, Sandra and Ann had been helping me teach my courses I was doing in Chattanooga, and I'm like, driving up there. I'm scared to death. Okay, so I get up to the place where they were having it. It's kind of a college-like area, and there's the company I was working with. They had multiple centers, and there was one in Nashville. And the people up there, again, it's know me, or seen the classes or something. And you pull up a park, and we're walking up the steps, and they're standing over there, and they've got the book, and they're waving it, and they're going, Bill, come over here. Let's study. Go study the cram. And I'm going, no, stay the hell away from me. No. Okay.
Right.
Like, sweating. I don't. I'm not, right? And so I'm sitting there, and I'm doing it, and I don't know if I'm doing it right or not. I don't know. It sounds right to me. I'm doing it right, whatever. And, realized I didn't know as much anatomy as I thought I thought it'd be easier than that, and it was not. So anyway, I was just scared to death. Okay. Well, okay. So, I made a 92.
Nice.
Well, but I screwed the anatomy up royally. I'm telling you, I did.
I did not know you made a 92.
Candy made a 93, and we joked because she knew where the seminal vesicles were located.
I got that one right.
She knew where the seminal vesicles were located in relation to the prostate. And she told me that, and I go, I don't care. I've had a vasectomy. It doesn't really matter to me. Right?
I got a 91, so I did not know that. 91, and Mark, he got a 94.
Wow.
I know.
So, again, it's look at the content specs and just make sure you know the definitions of these things. For example, in patient care, it says, for example, under legal issues, and it says common terminology, battery, negligence, malpractice, beneficence. I can't pronounce that word.
Beneficence.
Okay, what she said. What this means is they're going to ask you the definition of them. Look them up.
Right.
Or just look up the definition.
Just look them up. Memorize that definition.
Right. That's what they're going to ask you.
Right.
Respondeat superior, which is a Latin legal term. It means let the master answer. Look it up. Look up the terms.
Right.
And then just learn the definitions. That's what you do. Okay.
Are you familiar with ARRT? At all?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's kind of the same type of thing, right?
Well, we've not done the test, okay, but ARRT actually came into existence prior to the ARRT offering an MR exam, and it was run by a separate group out in California. The organization is now based in, I think, down in New Jersey, and it's a very well-run organization. Right. So it's they have clear requirements for people to become credentialed by them, and you can look at it on the website.
They've been approved since 2008. They've been recognized.
Yeah, the ACR recognizes them. Joint Commission recognizes them. They're recognized on par with the ARRT. One of the difficulties of doing the ARRT registry can be the clinical competencies, depending on where you work. Right. If you work in Kristan's rural hospital, you do brain, spines, and knees. You don't do any abdomens. You've done a chest, a chest, I mean CT. It can be hard. Or you think about this: you work in an orthopedic office. You got an orthopedic office, and maybe they have actually a dedicated extremity MRI unit, and all you do is knees, ankles, wrists, and elbow, and that's all you do. Right. So that's very difficult to get those clinical competencies. You can't sometimes go to. You say, "Well, I go to a hospital and they'll let me do it." No, not necessarily, because they have concerns about legal liabilities, right? I have recommended to techs who've come to me and said, I can't get the comps. I said, you need to check into ARRT, okay? I had a friend who was working for GE. Again, let's talk about, kind of going back to kind of the corporate path here. Mm-hmm. He, as a technologist, came into applications, moved up to some more applications-based stuff, worked a lot with their TIPS TV back in the day, and then he went into sales, and he liked his job in sales, and he was with a certain area of the company. And he figured he'd always be doing this job in sales. To Kristan's point, I thought I'd always be, right?
I actually thought about mine lapsing when I was at Philips, because I had chosen the business path.
Right. Yeah. One of the things I would recommend to anybody in a career thing, and do not let your license lapse. You never know when you're going to need it. You don't know what can happen, right?
Well, I got a question on that, because now some people are falling into their primary, well, they're like X-ray. Say your primary now is MRI, but you start out as X-ray tech, and you're within that 10-year where you have to renew.
Yeah.
Now, should you still renew that X-ray?
Okay. Well, let me come back to that. Okay. So, what Tom did was he decided he's going to be here forever, so he just let his license lapse. Okay. Well, his job ended. Okay, they got rid of his position. Okay. One of the customers that he has worked with in the past, an imaging center group, wanted him to come down and manage it. Right. He's got no RT license anymore, because what you lose is you lose everything, the whole thing. And he said, he was calling me. He said, "Well, can I go back to the ARRT and basically grandfather me in for let me just sit for MR?" I go, "No, they won't do that, because what happens is when you lose that." To get back, and I've had people in my classes that had that. I remember these ladies again. They took, they're not working anymore. Didn't think they ever need it, and all of a sudden, next thing you know, life happens, and now they need it. And I remember one lady in particular. She had just gotten through going through RT again, her RTR, and now she's getting her MR. To get her MR back. So what Tom did is actually take the ARRT path, and he's now actually on the board of ARRT. I mean, he's a well-recognized speaker and program, and does fantastic job. So I think it's definitely a career path. Now, as far as the every 10-year stuff, and I'm trying to remember the terminology. Fortunately for me, I'm a grandfather. Okay, but
me too.
if you got your RT and your RTR is grandfathered, but now you got your MR, which is not going to be grandfathered, then it's only the MR that you have to
renew every 10.
Yeah, and it's not a renew. I forget what they call it.
It's like a portfolio type.
It's a little vague.
It's a little hard to figure out from what I hear. But my understanding is that you do some sort of a online. It's not a test, but it's some sort of something online, and from that, then you're given recommendations of areas or topics that you need to get continuing education in. I'm forgetting.
That's my understanding as well.
Yeah, I'm forgetting the terminology. They have certain terminology for it.
Right.
And then, so what has to happen is because I'm running into this because I have to work through this with go do this with the ARRT. I have to, if somebody wants to use our MR Safety Officer course, for example, as credits towards safety for their renewal. But my course has to be listed with the ARRT as having been reviewed and now is acceptable for this.
Right.
It's kind of like the MR Registry review course. I have to, and it's literally just paperwork, but I have to list that with the ARRT so that people who sit for the MR Registry can use my course as the what's it called? Blocking on the name of it. For the credits that will count to you acceptable to take the test.
Right.
Structured education. That's what it's called.
Oh, yes.
Right. Structured education. Okay.
Right.
So, but basically what I understand all it is just basically getting CE credits as they direct for topics.
Nice.
And I think what a lot of people need to understand too, I think a lot of techs, and Chris and I are talking about this, are kind of confused with the ARRT versus the ASRT, right? We're registered with the ARRT, okay? Continuing education credits can be approved for acceptance by the ARRT as long as they are approved by what's called a recognized RECEEM, RECEEM. It's an acronym, and I can't remember what. Recognized something other,
right?
Whatever.
Right.
And there are several groups that can approve credits that are acceptable, that are recognized racemes that are acceptable to the ARRT. ASRT is one of them. SMRT is one of them. AHRA is one of them. There's a couple more. Okay.
Right.
So not everything has to be approved by the ASRT to count. Okay. And the ASRT is simply a society like the SMRT. Right.
Right.
So when you're looking for stuff for the registry, you go to the ARRT to find out what you got to do, not the ASRT.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. No, for sure.
Right. So, I mean, that's mostly like for the registry review. Do you have any other tips that you think that, I mean, what you've said so far is actually, I find really helpful. I wish I would have heard this when I was giving 10 years ago when I would do the registry. By the way, I barely missed the cutoff by like a month for being grandfathered.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Yep, me too.
I think
Really?
like 2 months.
Yeah.
But.
That's fine.
But once you pass the registry, you're now a licensed tech. Moving forward, what options do people have? Like, what career paths do MR techs have to evolve as a tech?
Well, I mean, you can take a corporate path, right? You know, but you know,
and that's more application.
Well, you could do applications. Okay, the applications,
Sales?
you know, sales.
Oh,
okay,
right.
All right. You can. It depends on what you want to focus on. Okay, let me give you kind of go through kind of how I kind of got there, and so give you an idea of what
tell us about your path, and then we'll kind of revisit.
You know,
yeah, that's a good.
Because they're so different.
Yeah.
Okay, so I graduated high school in '73. Had no idea what the crap I wanted to do. Somebody from the community college there in Chattanooga had given a presentation for their allied health, and they had orthopedic assistant and radiologic technologist. The radiologic technologist sounded really cool, and the guy that was doing the presentation really didn't know a lot about it, and he said you can start, and this is '73, you can start out making $16,000 a year. And I said, where do I sign up? I started out making $3.90 an hour. Okay, I mean, we're talking, this isn't 70. Okay, so I ain't making those 16. I remember talking to my wife and saying, hey, when I make $30,000 a year, you can quit work. Yeah. That's how back in those days. Anyway, so literally I was shooting talk about 25 and renting a car. I was shooting x-rays at 17 because they couldn't give me a film badge until I turned 18 because my birthday's not in October. So I went right out of high school, right into this. And, you know, I learned, you know, 3 things my first day: how to shoot a chest x-ray, where the rectum is located, and how to treat an adverse event. Right.
Right.
You know, so that's anyway, so, you know, the first thing I ever saw was a colostomy BE. Okay. First thing I ever saw.
Man.
Oh, yeah.
Hazing right there.
Yeah. Well, I walked into the room, and this tech is putting this tube where a tube shouldn't be able to go, and you know, and then I got home. I live at home, and so I'm 17 years old. I get home, and I sit at the dinner table, and my parents asked me, what did I do today? And I told them, and they ain't ever asked me again. My dad's passed, but my mom, you know, she'd call me a few years ago, you know, how you doing? She'll ask me how it's going. But I don't think she's ever asked me how, you know. And my sister, who was 2 years behind me, is telling people in high school, what's Billy doing now? He gives enemas. Okay. So anyway, I knew, you know. So quite honestly, I was an angiotech. Like Kristan, when she was doing her rotation, was hanging around MR. Back in the 70s, they didn't. If they wanted you over here, you went over here and you did this. Not like they do today.
Oh, right.
So I was in the cath lab, so I became an angiotech, which I really liked. And then going through that, then I eventually got a job as moved to another facility. Got a job as an assistant chief tech, and then so this is how I got into MR. So this radiologist group was going to build an imaging center, and they wanted to put in an MRI back in the early mid 80s. And the hospitals were scared to death of it. They wanted to partner with the hospitals. Hospitals going, we're not going to do that. We're going to do that. So one day I was taking a load of films into Dr. Jim Crawley's office, threw them on the desk there, and started to walk out. And he goes, hey, Bill, you hear we're building an imaging center. We're going to put in an MRI. And I said, yeah. I said, I'd like to run it for you. And he said, you would? I said, yeah. He said, okay, you got it. That's it. That was my that's your way in. That's how I got into MR. Okay. And anyway, so we did the imaging center. I got to hire the staff. I got to pick who I wanted from, you know, made a lot of people mad of hospitals because I picked people I wanted.
Right.
And, you know, at that time, I thought I wanted to do management, right? Because this looked like the way I was going, right?
Right.
Like I'm getting into something here, and this is the way I want to go. So I had an associate degree, and the University of Tennessee at Chattanooga had a program. Now I remember. I remember what my bachelor's is in now. It's something health management or something. I forget what it health something. I forget what.
He's got the degree. Okay.
I have to go look at it. It's on the wall. And by the way, they misspelled William in my degree.
Oh,
okay.
Funny.
Oh yeah, they transposed it. And I never saw it until somebody later pointed it out to me. Like, okay. So anyway, they had this program whereby they would give me mostly full credit for my 2-year degree. So really I only had 2 years to go to get a bachelor's degree. So I worked at it overnight doing it because that's what I thought I wanted to do. And I probably would have stayed in management if it wasn't for people, you know. So just management just didn't seem to fit. About that same time, so we're talking about, you know, how you can look for things in career paths. About that same time.
So he didn't like working, you know, having people under. I'm the one that really enjoyed that growth process.
Well, I liked working with people. It's just I didn't like to have to deal with certain things in management. Okay,
right.
When people were having problems, and
how many times do you have to circle back around, close a loop,
you know,
have a meeting about a meeting about it? I didn't like that part.
Right.
And so in a hospital, this is in an outpatient center. Hospital management would absolutely have driven me up the wall. I mean, I had enough feel for it for when I was, you know, assistant chief tech. I mean, I remember one time when I was assistant chief tech, I did this gal's performance evaluation. And you always had to come up with some area to improve, right? So, okay, I said, okay, sometimes when I hear you talking with the floor, you can come across a little curt. You might want to look at that. She got mad. She stood up. She stormed out. She left. She just left. She clocked out and left. And then the girl was the chief tech, Carolyn, said to me, well, what do you want to do with her? I said, you want her back? I go, well, if I take her back, she's done this to me. It seems like I'm just, you know, she'll get away with it. I've lost control. I said, no, I can replace her. Well, personnel wouldn't let me do it. We had to take her back. Okay, and I'm thinking, this gig is not for me. So getting into the imaging center, I was a little more comfortable with that because the management stresses were not as bad. Okay, and actually, I was more of a managing tech, actually, because I really loved MR. I loved MRI.
Smart, right?
Right. And well, then, the docs had sent me to a course. It was a course for MR taught by techs for techs. And that's how I thought, well, let's start doing some classes here, okay? Right. And with the radiologist, I said, hey, the money we earn from this, let's pay for people to go to courses, right? So back then, that's the way you learn stuff. You just had to go to a course, okay? Right. So that's how I kind of got into the teaching thing, okay? So most of the stuff I just kind of, one of the things I would advise technologists to do is keep your eyes open, never say no, and always know what you're saying no to, right? I mean, just, you know, you never know. And so
when you look at the degrees as far as associates and bachelors, and now that we do have a master's degree in MR, so I know that when I would be hiring employees for certain positions or other managers I would talk to, you had to have a minimum of a bachelor's. And then HR would just filter out people. And I was very much about hiring a personality. I knew I could train somebody, you know, if they were just going to be, because I mean, you can't send, I had people that I could send to New Jersey. But I had people that just personality-wise, they could not. You know, I wanted someone versatile. You know, that I could manage, and so I found that to be frustrating sometimes. That you had to have this minimum, you know, as far as a degree, and so you know, and then again, there's the masters now that we have in MRI. I know that there's one at UMMC, and we've actually met. I just want to make sure, umc.edu. We just know them.
Nice.
It's in Mississippi. It's in Jackson.
Is that an online one too?
I really don't know all the details.
I bet in large part it is.
Okay.
I'm guessing.
That's pretty cool.
We know the person that developed it, and I really respect how hard she actually came to us just begging for information many years ago. And I know there's others out there. That's just one that I pulled up today to mention. So
there's something you said that kind of was another thing I wanted to bring up to people, because it kind of plays into what I'm going through here, walking through what kind of I was moving through the field. For example, now Kristan mentioned the MR safety officer credentialing through the American Board of Magnetic Resonance Safety. And I hear people all the time say to me, well, will I get more money if I get that? People have got to stop looking at that. Okay. What this does is you're building your resume, you're building your talents, you're building what you have to offer somebody. They're not going to get somebody who basically has only done this and only clocks in. If that's what you want to do, you want to clock in, you want to clock out, great. That's what you'll do until they eliminate your position, right?
Right. Exactly.
So you've got to show what getting a degree to, in large part, I think, says to people, this is, I am capable of doing this kind of stuff, and I want to do this stuff, right? Because I want to do it, right? I want to do continuing education, not somebody. I don't want somebody to pay. If they pay for mine, fine. But if this is going to benefit me, then I need to pay for it, right? X-ray techs are one of the few professions where the employer is expected to provide for me to maintain my license. I mean, think about that. My job, my choice to get into this, why should my employer maintain my license?
Right.
It really doesn't make sense, right? No. So anyway, that's when we started, teaching and doing all this stuff. And then, I don't know, you probably don't know this. I don't tell people this very much, but do you remember in the
You're about to tell a lot of people.
Yeah. Do you remember in the early
Again,
days?
I'll just say into the mic, he's about to tell a lot of people.
No.
Did you hear it the second time?
The long ago, there was initially, back really early days of surface coil stuff, all of a sudden on a GE, it came out with this thing called a combiner box where you could take two 3-inch coils, right, and put them, do you remember that? The combiner box.
They weren't born.
We probably weren't born, but dual coil imaging, okay?
We did talk about that on another podcast, though.
Right, but, okay.
Like a dual flex kind of it?
Well, okay, but two coils. The first ones to do that were in Chattanooga. That's how I lucked into this. Okay, nice. We had two surface coils that happened to be identical, and I didn't know it. And I asked if I could hook two of them into a B and C connector, and would they work? And could I do stuff like put one on the top of the neck and the back of the neck?
Right.
And the service engineer says, I don't know. And he calls their GE's headquarters and said, will this work? They go, I don't know. And they laughed. And I said to the service engineer, what would be the worst thing that happened? He said, you could blow a preamp. I said, you got a spare preamp? He said, yeah, okay, let's try it. So I put it in there, and it actually worked. And I looked out how I had them oriented. If I turned them the other way, it wouldn't have worked. But turned them the right way, and it did work. And started showing this around. Then GE saw this. So, again, for people who getting into stuff, don't let stuff discourage you, okay?
Right.
So, GE, back in those days, we're going to have a user meeting at this, what now is the ISMRM. I forget what it was called. It was in a big meeting in Montreal. This was back in the late 80s, okay? And they said, we want you to present on this dual coil thing, okay? So my radiologist, Dr. Don Mills, says, you're going to present it. I said, no, you present it. He goes, no, it's user. You do it. And then I say, okay. He says, but here's what you got to do. He said, you ever been to one of these meetings before? I said, no. He said, they're horrible. He said, what they do is they get up and they stand up.
That's why he was making you do it.
No, he said, you get it. Well, yeah. You get up, you do the presentation, and after you do your presentation, the other people in the audience get up and they challenge you. And they want to know how, why, and they're going to quiz you on it. And you're going to have to be able to answer it. And furthermore, they tell you 5 minutes, you're going to be 5 minutes, or they're going to come pull you off stage. He said, so it's got to be practiced. Now, I've been teaching courses, okay?
Right.
And I've been, but teaching stuff, and maybe done a few, I haven't done any really lecture or, talks, okay?
Right.
So he says, you're going to need to do this, and you're going to need to get it down to 5 minutes. He grilled me, practiced me. I did that talk over and over and over. And this is old days of slides, okay? And I'm like, okay, good Lord, okay? And I said, surely they don't do this. Okay, so I go to this meeting, And I'm in a big session. I'm not talking at this session. The user group was a smaller session. So I'm in this big conference room, okay? And this guy gets up and he's doing a presentation on something called gradient echo imaging. Okay, so it's a big thing back then, right? So he does his presentation. After he gets through with his presentation, people get up in the mic and ask questions. All of a sudden, this little skinny guy, he's a Jewish Philly, he's got the little hat on his head, okay? We'll come back to that in a minute. Gets up.
Canal.
Okay, and Manny Canal is about 2 years younger than me, okay? Okay, so this young skinny guy, because I got to be in my 30s, so Manny's in his 30s, or late 20s, or 30s, I don't know.
Right.
Okay. So, and I've never seen the guy before. I have no idea who he is, okay? He tears that speaker a new one, okay? He says stuff like, what you're saying is not valid. We did this. We did that. Your validity, I question your methods. We do this. We did that. I mean, he just went on, and I'm sitting there going, oh, my Lord, this is brutal.
Right.
Okay. So now we go to the GE user meeting, and on the docket is actually there was Bill Bradley, there was the guy out at Stanford, Bob Herfkins, other big names. I mean, the big name guys: MD, MD, PhD, PhD, MD, PhD, PhD, MD, MD, Bill Faulkner, RT. Okay, I'm serious. I was the last one on the stand. Okay,
that's right.
So I mean, I'm sitting there, and then fortunately though. Nobody's, they're not grilling them. This is a real, obviously friendly thing, except I am scared to death.
Right.
Okay. So I get up and I get ready to start. And guess who walks in the back door?
Dr. Canal.
Canal. The same guy. I have no idea who he is, but it's the same guy. And I'm going, oh my God. And so I'm using the laser pointer and it's making big circles on the screen. So I'm just so nervous,
You're
right?
a total pucker. You know,
it was so. It actually went over very well, but that was my first presentation. I thought, oh my Lord, I've never rehearsed a talk since. Okay, just so you know. And I told Manny that story. I said,
does he remember it?
No, he don't remember what he's had for dinner. I mean, seriously, but I told him about it. And I said, oh my goodness. So anyway. The point is that opened up doors for doing presentations. It also opened up doors where we started doing a lot of clinical evaluations for GE on new stuff. And I got to work with Dr. Paul Keller. And when he was out here at Barrows and developing time of flight, real fortunate to meet and work with him. And so that got me, into basically where, but I was
Cool Kids Club, right?
But I was getting pigeonholed because everything was GE. To Kristan's point about pigeonholed, understand, look out in life, pigeonholing can cause you problems because only people that wanted me to speak was GE.
Right.
And it really, even after I had started working for myself, I was having trouble getting, and working with other vendors because, well, he's a GE guy. Well, he's a, and so at first what I thought was going to be a bad thing, being not clinically tied to a scanner or associated with a scanner, turned out to be a good thing because now we have our MRSO courses in Siemens price book. And so Siemens sends their customers if they want to spend their education
Philips
money.
actually has had us the past years at their user meeting, and we've done our MRSO course there in Orlando for 2 days while they have. So we definitely, actually in Canada, GE in Canada.
Yeah, GE in Canada brought us up to do it.
They 3 times I think they brought us up to do that.
Wow.
Yeah. So
just always be open to stuff, and the more you push yourself, like I said, Kristan was pushing into business stuff. I was just tend to pushing in the MR tech kind of stuff.
Right.
And it just kind of fell into place, and you never know.
I want to say this. So I would like to know the answer to this. I probably do, but how did it feel? Because to me, when I decided, and I still am a scanning technologist, so Bill and I have access to Philips, Siemens with me, and then we have access to GE with him. Mm-hmm. So, currently I only work a few days a year, but we still have access to these systems. But when I decided, and I trust him so much, really to become self-employed, to me, It was like jumping off the 10th story of a building.
Oh, yeah.
But I already had a solid background, someone with a lot of experience. So I want to know what it felt like to you to make that transition.
That, okay, is one of my defining days, you know, aside from the first talk I ever did. But the day that happened was one that is as clear in my memory as if it happened yesterday. Okay, so this is 21 years ago. Okay, so at that time I was working for because of the way quickly how I got there. I was the imaging center sold to an outside company. I worked for that outside company in a corporate for a couple of years, and I began to work out of my house because I was traveling around, and that kind of I liked that. I liked that self, you know, scheduling and stuff like that. And I liked that. I liked the traveling around, working with different sites. I just kind of enjoyed. That was so different for me, and I really liked it. Especially I was going to miss. I thought I would really miss the clinical aspect of it, and I didn't teach any courses for that couple of years because of the way my job was working. And then that company was bought by another company, and the president of the company that's now buying the company I'm now working for, I was called the clinical operations manager. He comes through for some tour, and he walks in with his little entourage, and I go up to him, and I go, Mr. I forget what his name is, Bill Faulkner, you know, glad to meet you. And he goes, yeah, who are you and what do you do? I mean, this guy had no personality. He says, who are you and what do you do? I said, well, I'm kind of like a corporate chief tech. I said, and back then mammography accreditation was, you know, real getting started. And so I would go around, make sure everybody's mammography accreditation was, you know, in line, and help marketing people, help market new techniques and stuff like that, because all these centers had marketing people. And I would, you know, troubleshoot some image quality issues and stuff with the radiologists and techs if they had any questions and stuff. And I said, you know, so that's kind of what I do. And he looked at me and he goes, yeah, well, we have applications people. Okay, so right then, okay, I knew my job is ending, okay?
Right.
This job is no more. I go, okay, fine, thank you. So I go home and I called the business manager of another radiology group in Chattanooga, who was the second group to get a MR. And the radiologist, he's passed away, but Dr. Hugh Morrow had told the operations manager, or his billing office manager, Bill Sanders, go get Bill Faulkner, take him to lunch. You know, tell him if he ever needs a job. You know, listen. So I called Bill Sanders. I go, hey, Bill, it's Bill Faulkner. He goes, yeah. I said, you know, you told me to give you a call if I ever need a job. I said, I need a job. He said, okay, let's talk. He said, we don't have anything. I said, well, let's talk. So we go see Dr. Morrow. Dr. Morrow is very business-oriented, okay? Very business-oriented. And he says, Bill, I'd love to have you, but we really just don't have any position for you. What could you do? I said, well, tell you what, I can do my MR courses, and you can have the money. And, you know, I had told him what I wanted, and I'm surprised I got it, but don't run away. And I said, you can have the money, and I'll help you out any other way I can around here with courses. They worked it out where I would then be partly paid by the business office group that was doing their business office, and partly paid by the radiology group. But the radiologist group was making money off of me. They were making more than they were paying for me. Okay, so everybody was happy for a while, right? Okay, and so. But the girl that was managing MR eventually wanted to improve her career, so she went and got her MBA. Sue got her MBA and now moved into being practice manager for the group out of MR. So MR needed an MR supervisor. It comes me. Now, well, so then I move over. Now I'm working totally in MR, but I'm still being partly paid by this. But all of a sudden, this is starting to limit the number of times I can go out and do talks, right? So this is kind of limiting my outside travel talks, okay? But they still wanted me to keep doing the course because they're making money off that. The problem is I'm now trying to manage MRI. This is a level 1 trauma center that got 2 magnets. I mean, it's you know, and it's a hospital, okay? So it's got, you know, all this stuff. And so it began to cause problems internally with the group when I wasn't available because I'm teaching a class, right?
Right.
So this was a strain, and I was like, you know, I can't do anything about it. This is then the defining moment. I'm sitting at the scanner one day, and George, forget George's last name, who was my direct manager's manager. So it was the region manager for this billing company group. Comes in through MRI. Obviously, we didn't have controlled access, but he comes walking through MR, and I'd never seen him in there. Never seen him in there before. I said, "Hey, George." He goes, "Hey, Bill." I said, "What are you doing here?" He said, "Well, we're meeting with Dr. Morrow and Sue, and we're actually looking at putting you completely under plasma. In other words, completely under the radiology group management." Right. I knew right then and there, I'm going right down a pigeonhole, right? I'm going right down to where I will always be managing MR, and I won't have this. Yep. All right. So I'd been talking with a friend of mine. That was my defining moment, okay? Because I knew right then, and I said to George, and I had been talking to a friend in Atlanta who'd been encouraging me to do my classes on my own. He goes, "Why are you giving these people money? Why don't you just doing this for yourself?" Okay. Well, but to Kristan's point, I get a check every 2 weeks.
That was my biggest fear.
I get a check every 2 weeks.
I got to feed these kids mouths.
I get a check every 2 weeks, and I know what I'm getting every 2 weeks. Right?
Why risk it?
There is comfort in that. You have to understand that being self-employed, what happens is sometimes there'll be a month where you don't get much money. And then the next month, and so, because some people are net 30, 60, 90. So it's a very different. So we have to budget differently. But I'm telling you, it is very fulfilling. It's even, okay, so the only failure is being afraid to fail. Does that sound kind of smart? I've read it somewhere, but
that's the thing. So this has been in the back of my mind. So the guy's standing there telling me what's about to happen. So within 10 seconds, I now see what's about to happen to me, and I tell George, I said, "Well, George, I should probably let you know that I'm thinking about leaving and just doing consulting full time." He goes, "Oh, you're thinking about doing that?" I go, "Yeah." He says, "Well, that'll make a difference. I'll bring that up to him." And then I go home and I tell my wife, "I think I just quit my job." And sure enough, essentially I did.
Essentially that's what it sounds like.
Essentially I did. Okay. And then so I, started working, teaching my own classes. I partnered a little bit with the radiology group on the side to get started. Once I got started, I broke away on my own, everything. Once you figure out everything's going to go well. And then I was also traveling around for GE because I had a good in with GE. So for people, I'm saying, get in with your vendor, look for that. And so then they would have me go sites and help with optimization and stuff like that. So, it just, I've been blessed. Okay.
Before you know it, you were writing books.
Writing books. Don't get me on that. I mean, writing books is really not my favorite thing to do. You got to
we have 2 that we're supposed to be working on, and I don't even know how far down they are on the to-do list.
It keeps getting pushed back.
Because of more important things that we have to do. Come to Phoenix and have a good time with you guys.
We appreciate that.
So, no, that's, what I'm saying. It's just 2 completely different paths. Okay.
And yet somehow we converged at some point, and it's worked out. It's worked out beautifully. I think anyone can be anything that they want to be. They just have to, make it happen.
Don't sell yourself short, and do not ignore opportunities. Right. Always know what you're saying no to, but don't ignore opportunities. And
He's taught me that.
Always build your own. And don't
legacy
don't just build your own education, your own knowledge, right?
Yeah.
So don't expect somebody to do it for you.
Knowledge is power. I truly believe that.
And I would never hire anybody that expects me to do everything for them, right? I want them to want to build themselves. That's what I would want for somebody, and that's what I'd recommend for people.
For sure.
So it sounds like a good suggestion for MR techs you would have is just be a yes man. Basically, if they come to you and they ask you to pick up a new assignment or something like that, say yes.
Learn cardiac.
Build a resume. And,
and not always ask, "Well, do I get any more money for it?"
Right.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't want. They truly, I think, Bill, to his point, a lot of people don't, they just want to clock in and clock out. And hopefully they're educated well enough to be able to be smart enough to even clock in.
Right.
We would hope that they would be seeking more knowledge.
Right.
But then there are those people that are just, there's actually someone with applied radiology, and they say he takes every course. Is that not true?
Yeah,
every course.
It's a doctor. They say he's on everything. And so I'm like, he's my goal. Okay, someone that is seeking knowledge that much.
There's a lot of education out there that is, if it's a lot of the free stuff is like sponsored by
a large vendor,
or something like that. And so, I'm not saying all free stuff's not good, but I mean, there's stuff out there. The other thing you can do is we would encourage you to join the SMRT, the MR Tech Society, okay?
Right.
Because for your annual fee, you get all these homes. You can actually get all 12 of your credits through some of these really good home studies. Some are more basic and some are extremely advanced. And I like to listen to stuff where I only understand just a fraction of it, because that means I'm going to learn something.
Some of the post questions that we had prepared was, what advice would you give someone interested in taking a similar career path as you?
I think we hit that one pretty hard. I think you guys gave out a lot of good.
Be a yes man for sure.
Well, I mean, just look for opportunities and keep improving yourself. Push yourself.
Don't be afraid, and like I said, don't be afraid to fail. And we were talking about this while you were taking your little pee-pee break. Always remember that some of the worst managers you learn the most from. And so you take what you don't want to be with you to your next job.
Do you want to start naming names?
They know. And there's a target, and they don't. I'm just joking. But I've had mostly some of the best managers in the world.
Yeah. Right.
But I've had several that were absolutely horrible. And I just know what I didn't want to be when I moved into these different roles. So even if you are in a situation where you're trying to get out of it, there is something to be learned from that. And so you have to pick. We've gone down the road of him and of me, and we took totally different. You just have to keep your options open.
Right.
People are afraid of change. I mean, that is a huge thing.
Keep your options open, your license current.
Yeah, I mean, don't let your license lapse. I mean, and think about it. I mean, just to use an example, if you're saying, well, I don't want to take this for $5. I need $5.50. Okay, so you're willing to lose this for 50 cents, right? In other words, you're willing to take 100% of nothing,
right? That's a good way to put it.
I mean, that's what you wind up with, right?
So, well, 0 from 0 is 0.
90% of something is better than 100% of nothing.
I learned that in a legal case, just so you know, because it was about payment for something, and they were like, "Yeah, you're not getting anything because 0 from 0 equals 0."
Well, we love to ask everybody this question as we as we wrap up the episode. I'm really interested in hearing you guys' answer. But what excites you most about the future of MRI?
The unknown.
That's a really good question, or a really good answer.
I think the unknown, because it's constantly evolving, and I just think not knowing which direction, and also because of not knowing which direction, what direction is my career being self-employed going to take me?
Right.
I've hit that
4 times. I think 4.
There was one you missed. No. I'm coming clean here because you're going to see it at some point. But I think that not knowing is exciting to me.
Nice.
So.
That's awesome.
I love that answer.
I like what I'm seeing being developed at the higher field, like 7 Tesla. It seems really exciting. I think some of the newer reconstruction techniques, particularly the ones using the artificial intelligence, which are letting us really reduce scan times. I think they're going to open up some doors for really nifty applications and stuff. That's what excites me most. I mean, what excites me most is I see people getting encouraged or getting focused on MR safety and getting focused on, getting their credentials as an MR safety officer and stuff like that, and really focusing on that. I think if we make it safer for our patients and stuff, that's a good thing.
I think we're spunking up some of that passion.
Right.
That people sometimes MR techs feel stifled, and I think
there's 4 of us in a room talking about MR right now. I mean,
on the weekend, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And we're happy to be here.
Yeah, right.
Because we're spreading something that hopefully is going to be like change.
Right. Yeah. Contagious too, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it goes without saying, we are honored to be joined by you two. I appreciate it. You guys came from all the way across the country to join us. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Pleasure.
You guys, please, if you would, let the people know what you have coming up as far as like presentations, dates, your podcast, MRIcast.com.
Yeah, well, here's what we've got. We do MR Registry reviews almost monthly, except maybe in January, December, kind of like that. MR Safety Officer courses several times a year, CT Registry courses several times a year. All of the courses that we do in Chattanooga are also available to attend via live simulcast. So if you can't travel, then you can attend the course, get the credits. It's live. You can participate, ask questions, and so on. We're working on a podcast project called MRI Cast. Nice. So you can find that online. All of this is on our website of www.t2star.com. We have video projects with a couple of companies, Applied Radiology, Northwest Imaging Forums. Each one of those have various education programs of ours, and we also do a lot of MR site audits, risk assessments from a safety standpoint. So all of these things are on our website of t2star.com. So there's also you can sign up for a little news list thing, and then you can follow us on Twitter or LinkedIn, something like that. Which, by the way, is another thing I think for career paths. You can look at some of the social media, but be very cautious of Facebook. And one other advice I'd give people: make sure you've got an email that sounds professional, not like MRI Hot Chick 59. I mean, I've seen these, and it's like that's not the way you go apply for a job, right?
I agree.
Just watch the emails and the Facebook stuff.
There's no app where you can swipe left on the for the job application,
right? Yeah, they don't do that. Right?
Are you a swiper?
I'm taken.
Well, you can get CEU credits by going to their website. You can get CEU credits by going to our website, zone3podcast.com. Look for us on YouTube, all those different platforms. Look on them, their venues or their platforms as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
You guys are awesome.
Yeah.
And thank you. Hit subscribe, hit like, tell all your friends, do all those things that YouTube people tell you to do. Thank you, Reggie. That's it, all right? Zone 3 Podcast, we're out.
Great.
Thank you.
That's great. All right, thank you.